Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for this week's training. It's a great pleasure once again to have this opportunity to speak with you about our new life products and how we can better position ourselves to help those who come to us for assistance. As you might have seen in your invite, we are once again having a Q&A for our product session today. And without further ado, let me go to some of the questions that we have received for this session. The first, I think, is in connection to the last few sessions we've done on metabolic health. And it's about someone wanted to know the symptoms of insulin resistance. And you might remember from the session on insulin resistance and even on metabolic health, I mentioned that insulin resistance does not manifest itself in the same way for everyone. So it just doesn't have like maybe 3 symptoms which you can find in each person with it. It differs from person to person. So I will give some examples of manifestations of insulin resistance as might be observed in different people. The first and probably the one with which we might be familiar is where insulin resistance escalates into prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. So for some people, once they become insulin resistant, they simply escalate into the symptoms of type 2 diabetes. And that will be the first place that they realize they have been having. Maybe they might remember after the diagnosis that they had been noticing certain things happening. The other people might actually manifest as high blood pressure. So high blood pressure might have other causes, but one of the causes would be insulin resistance. So if you have high blood pressure, you need to already adjust your lifestyle and diet habits as a precaution against insulin issues. Another way in which it can insulin resistance can manifest itself would be in the body depositing fat in tissues that are not normally fat-bearing. As you might recall from your biology, there are certain tissues in our bodies that carry fat cells, and that is where normally fat would be deposited. But once we are insulin resistant, we'll find that fat might be deposited in places which are not supposed to carry fat. And this is called ectopic fat deposits. That is, they are out of their normal place. And this type of fat, which is in an abnormal place, will be highly inflammatory because they produce inflammatory chemicals within the body and start causing the chronic systemic inflammation that we so often mention as found linked to many lifestyle-related illnesses. So ectopic fat can be deposited in places like the liver, and you probably will be familiar with the term non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So this is another manifestation of how insulin resistance can escalate so that it causes the liver to receive contradictory signals and ends up with the liver converting glucose and other substrates into fat. And instead of sending this fat to the fat tissues, it stores it within itself. And eventually that fatty liver is going to become much more diseased, and you end up with what we call fatty liver disease. The third will be having fat deposits in the muscles. And if you maybe have seen very fatty steaks that the cow has been deliberately fattened so that it starts to deposit fat inside the flesh that is supposed to be meaty. In our body, that also happens when we start depositing fat inside the muscles. We are going to have fat where we are not supposed to have it. The normal places for fat to be deposited would be, for example, under our skins, especially in parts like the buttocks and the thighs, maybe the arms, and so on. You can also have fat being deposited within the heart muscle itself or around the heart, the pericardium. You can have these abnormal fat deposits. And this happens because the insulin resistance is causing conflicting signals in the glucose metabolism pathways. This includes the liver, the pancreas, and these organs that we mentioned when we're talking about metabolic health, either part 1 or part 2. And so these are, that is another one. So the ectopic fat or the abnormal fatty deposits is another manifestation of insulin resistance. A fourth manifestation of insulin resistance will be PCOS. So some people may not show any of those signs above, but instead what insulin resistance will do is trigger an imbalance in reproductive hormones, causing a woman to produce abnormally high levels of testosterone, which in women is there, but it's supposed to be in low levels compared to men. And this can have symptoms like a woman starting to develop noticeable facial hair that would be more common to be found in men. And then in addition to that, her ovaries will start producing many small fluid-filled cysts. That is why it is called polycystic, meaning many cysts on the ovary, instead of producing proper eggs as the ovary is supposed to produce, and this will lead to an impaired fertility in the woman. So the insulin resistance triggers an imbalance in her reproductive hormones so that instead of having low amounts of testosterone, she starts having higher amounts, and her ovaries in response to that will stop producing proper eggs, and what will happen is that there'll be many small fluid-filled cysts on the ovaries, and that is what we refer to as PCOS. And that is why often in PCOS you'll hear our recommendation to be on botanical balance and to go on a diet similar to what a diabetic or pre-diabetic would be on. Then a final point I wanted to make about symptoms of insulin resistance is that some people may not manifest the previous ones that I've said, but what they might manifest is symptoms of dementia, especially a form of Alzheimer's disease that is closely linked to poor sugar metabolism. So this is because a chronic high blood glucose damages blood vessels, including those blood vessels that supply the brain. And this impairs the brain's ability. It also impairs the brain's ability to metabolize glucose. And that means that the brain tissue itself becomes insulin resistant. And you know that the brain is one of the organs that uses glucose the most for its operation, that energy for thinking and operating in our brains will be impaired because the brain tissues have become insulin resistant and are therefore resisting the entry of glucose into the places where it's required. And that, of course, is going to lead to brain fog in earlier stages. But this is also closely linked to Alzheimer's disease, especially early onset Alzheimer's disease. Not in everybody, but in some people, this is actually how insulin resistance will manifest itself. So again, if you have a familial tendency or history of Alzheimer's and other types of dementia, it is a good idea to start taking precautions at an early age to avoid problems with your glucose metabolism. Then the next question, leaving aside insulin resistance, which I think is a topic we'll be coming back to quite often because great awareness is coming into play now about how much it is contributing to the problems that we are having with our lifestyle diseases. So the next question was, how does stress affect blood sugar? Often you'll hear that one of the things that leads to type 2 diabetes, as well as an unhealthy metabolism, is stress. And when the body registers a stressor, that is a source of stress, it reacts by producing stress hormones, of which we know adrenaline, which is familiar, or cortisol, which is another one that's becoming familiar. So these hormones are released into the blood circulation, and they act as signals that trigger other hormones that tell the body that glucose is going to be needed to deal with whatever stress that we are going through. Remember that stress is a part of our life, but chronic stress is not a part of our life, because what would normally happen if we live in a situation where we are under chronic stress, what human beings would normally do is to leave that place eventually, because your system becomes very, very stressed, and you realize that that place is no longer safe as a habitation. But the way in which we live these days, you cannot just up and leave your job or your town and so on. So what happens is that we live in this stressful condition, and our body becomes so stressed out that we call it chronic systemic stress, which now is going to cause further problems. So it starts with stress, that you're having all these stress hormones are circulating in your blood. Whereas under normal condition, once the stressor has been dealt with, let us say in previous times when we are living in near forests where there are wild animals, if there is a wild animal chasing us, what we will do is run and maybe climb up a tree, and the animal will eventually maybe go away, and the stress hormones would be dissipated, and our system will come to normal. Or if we get frightened by something, once we deal with the fright, or let's say we have an emergency, once we deal with the emergency successfully, what happens is that the stress hormones go back to normal. But if we are under continuous stress, the stress hormones never dissipate. So there will be a continuous message. Let's say if you're in a stressful job or a stressful situation or relationship, the blood glucose is going to be maintained at an abnormally high level, because there'll be a continuous message from the stress hormones telling this, triggering the liver and other pathways to add glucose to the blood circulation so that you have the energy, the fuel that you need to deal with your stress. But because you're not able to deal with that stress, you're simply living in that stress, this situation of an abnormally high blood glucose is going to be chronic. And that is how you find yourself in a situation where you have elevated blood glucose, elevated insulin, insulin, you'll remember, is produced by certain cells in the pancreas. And the pancreas, because it is continuously pumping out high amount of insulin, is going to be worn out, and these cells will eventually not be able to produce insulin as they're supposed to, which means that there is going to be a lot of conflicting signals in this blood glucose pathways and blood glucose managing organs. This, we are talking about the pancreas and the liver, and also other ones to a lesser extent. So in this way, you can see that the stress, initially, the stress hormones are telling you need to have lots of glucose ready for you to go into action to resolve the stress. But since this does not happen, you have these continuous high stress hormones, high blood sugar, and high insulin, because the insulin is being produced because the body keeps on thinking it's not because we are in trouble and we don't have enough glucose and we need to keep on pumping more glucose, which means we need to pump more insulin because the body thinks maybe there isn't enough insulin. And so in such a situation, stress is actually contributing to these blood sugar issues. And the third question that I have for today is actually related to the very same thing, because that question was, how does stress cause type 2 diabetes? So you can imagine that if you're in this continuous chronic stress situation with chronically elevated stress hormones, which lead to chronic high blood sugar, because there is this lack of uptake of the blood sugar, and the chronic high levels of insulin, because the pancreas keeps on pumping out insulin to try and force the blood glucose out of the blood into the tissues, you are going to end up developing type 2 diabetes, as the pancreas is going to become worn out and it's not going to be able, it's not going to be able to produce the insulin that you need, because the organs do get exhausted if they keep on doing their job in an abnormally chronic way. They are supposed to do some of these things and then come back to normal. If they never come back to normal, then there is going to be problems with that specific organ. And that is how your stress first leads to elevated blood glucose and elevated insulin, and eventually it is going to lead to type 2 diabetes. And in some people, it will be also accompanied by high blood pressure, and in others by brain fog. Because remember, abnormally high blood sugar is going to have those problematic points that I mentioned in the first question. So those first three questions are actually related to these sessions that we have been having about a healthy metabolism. Then the next question was what to recommend. Okay, before I go to that, let me just recommend that for insulin resistance and issues related to blood sugar metabolism, we have got an excellent supplement called Botanical Balance, which helps the body to maintain normal glucose levels in blood circulation. So it is a first step towards normalizing your blood sugar metabolism pathways. In addition to that, we have got threonine, which is important for normal cell activity. So threonine ensures healthy cells, and when the cells are healthy, they will respond normally the way they are normally supposed to respond to insulin, which means that your body can then take a break from continuously pumping out more and more insulin. In addition, and finally, the third product we recommend would be fiber tablets as well as magnesium. The fiber tablets also plays an important role in helping to slow down the amount of glucose entering our blood circulatory system from the gut, from digestion, whereas magnesium plays an important role in several of those pathways. So those four would be the recommendations we have for helping those who are noticing either symptoms of prediabetes or they are noticing other symptoms to do with insulin resistance and abnormal blood sugar regulation. Then, so with that, going on to our fourth question, someone wanted to know what to recommend for brain atrophy. So in maybe a more normal way of referring to this is brain shrinkage. So our brains do shrink at times for various reasons. Some of the reasons include a traumatic injury to the head. It could also be as a result of aging. As we age, and especially if we become less active and less involved in ways that keep our brains challenged, we may find that our brains start to shrink. Substance abuse of certain substances, very problematic one is use of alcohol, especially excessive use of alcohol also can be a reason why our brain is shrinking or atrophying. Illnesses such as Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson can also cause progressive brain damage. So then, our aim in the case of brain atrophy is not that we are going to reverse it. What we can hope to do is slow down the progression of the illness. And for that, we'll recommend omega-3 salmon oil. We'll recommend mind enhancement formula, vitamin B complex, as well as vitamin E, or wheat germ oil. Remember, wheat germ oil contains the E vitamin. So if you opt for wheat germ oil, you don't need to take vitamin E as well. Vitamin A plus D is also an important one. This you can obtain either as a supplement or by getting adequate sun exposure. I know that many of us are living indoors for most of the daylight hours, but if it is at all an option for you, maybe you are living in a sunny place where you can get half an hour or so of sun, good sun every day, you would be able to do without vitamin A plus D supplementation. If you are, however, someone who spends most of your day indoors, or you are living in a climate where the sun is a lot weaker, especially for a dark-skinned person, then as always, I would recommend that you supplement with vitamin A plus D. So then, as I said, in the case of brain shrinkage that is not related to a traumatic injury or to these other points, you can also make a point of challenging your brain by learning new skills, by learning new hobbies, just simply learning new things that challenge your brain to keep on working harder and rising to new challenges. So that would be a lifestyle point that you need to take into your lifestyle. The fifth question was someone wanted to know what's the best time to take Botanical Balance. So I would say take 2 tablets at the beginning of your largest meal. So if your largest meal is at lunchtime, then you take it then. And remember, with the people who have got issues to do with with the sugar metabolism, it's not recommended that you eat your last meal of the day late in the evening. Try to get your last meal in maybe by something like 7 o'clock, as often as you can manage. I know this is difficult if you're a family person, or maybe you work long hours and can only get home late. But do your best to eat as early as you can so that you don't eat close to bedtime. And choose which meal is your largest one so that you use botanical balance to help you to manage your blood sugar metabolism correctly. We then go on to the next question. Someone wanted to know when to take medication because the blood sugar has stabilized. So they've been having blood sugar issues, and now the situation is stable. They see that they are able to maintain normal blood sugar. The first thing is ensure that blood sugar remains stable for between 1 and 2 months. So I would say if your blood sugar is stable for 2 months, then you can now start considering discussing with your doctor how to wean yourself from whatever medication you have been put on. But what we do not absolutely recommend is to suddenly stop your medication, say nothing to your medical practitioner, and simply go into it cowboy style. So rather work with your doctor, because they'll be taking measurements of your blood glucose, and they too will be noticing that your blood glucose is remaining stable at a normal level. And you can then have the conversation about what to do with the medication. Okay, next question was, someone who is doing well with the products for resolving type 2 diabetes. However, they would like to control the portions of food that they eat. So they still find they are eating more than they would like to. And of course, this is a common problem in our day when food for a fair number of people is well available. We are not, many people, thank God, are not living close to starvation. However, that of course means that we can be in the habit of eating more than we need, which is called overnutrition. And this is something that we need to be aware of so that we give our body what it needs rather than maybe what we are enjoying. And so in the lifestyle points, I would first recommend time-restricted eating. If we try to starve ourselves, eventually we will be frustrated and we'll stop. We'll start eating the way we were eating before. So rather than trying to go on a starvation diet, a better way is to have a cutoff time for the hours during which you'll eat. So let us say you'll have your breakfast at a certain time and your last meal of the day at a specific time. And outside of that period, from your first meal to your last meal, you do not eat. So avoid eating, snacking, number one. So that's an easy place to start. Eat only during meals. Let us say you have 3 meals a day, for example, or even 2 meals a day. Start by stopping the habit of snacking. It can actually be quite problematic in contributing to excessive weight gain and having a hard time maintaining a healthy weight. Then the next thing you can do is bring your mealtime at least 3 hours before you go to sleep or you go to bed. And that way, by restricting the period during which you eat, you will be doing what is called time-restricted eating, and this can help you to start reducing the amount that you eat. Because if you are eating, let us say, 3 meals and 3 snacks, then it does accumulate and you may find that you are eating more than you actually need. So you can try that. You can get into the habit of taking a 20-minute stroll after the meal. It helps with curbing the appetite, because sometimes if we are eating and we continue sitting at the table, we might just say, yeah, let me have something more. And then after a while, maybe let me have something more. And we find that we just keep on nibbling at this and nibbling at that. So have a beginning to the meal, have an end to the meal. Once the meal is over, take a moment to maybe go for just a stroll, not like a vigorous walk or anything hyped up like that, just to alert the body that the eating activity is over. and also giving yourself a chance to be aware that your system has been fed and the feeding is over, and now you can move on to the next thing. Opt for fiber-rich carbohydrates. These are more filling, and so you need to change your carbohydrates from maybe milled grain foods and so on, which are highly refined and so on, and rather opt for fiber-rich carbohydrates, because these ones stretch the stomach and send a signal to your brain that the stomach is full, there is no need to eat anymore. The carbohydrates which are poor in fiber, you can eat a very large volume. So you can think about how easy some people find to drink maybe like a 2 liter of Coke, because there is no registering that you have filled your stomach. You're simply taking a fluid, and the fluid is sweet and it's easy to take in. So be aware of something like that. Then after getting this the habits I've mentioned in your lifestyle, you can then see whether you would be comfortable with eating slightly smaller amounts of food. Don't reduce drastically, just reduce little by little, so that you don't send your body into a panic where the body starts thinking that you're starving. And the brain will, if you do that, your brain starts signaling to you that you need to look for food, and that is how you develop food cravings. So don't go into crash diets, please. They tend to be counteractive, and they tend to backfire as well. Rather, get good habits into your lifestyle, which are going to help you to slowly reduce your portion sizes, or the total amount of food that you eat. There are supplements that can also assist you here. This will be fiber tablets, which will supplement the dietary fiber that you get from your fiber-rich carbohydrate foods. And then also botanical balance helps in reducing cravings and managing helping your body to maintain normal blood glucose, which of course will help you to maintain your resolution of your type 2 diabetes. Next, we have a question about varicose veins. And this one refers to swollen veins that commonly appear on the legs. They tend to be familial, and they may be the result due to weak vein walls, which tend to be exacerbated by a sedentary lifestyle. Either you stand for long periods or you sit for long periods, as well as having a high body weight than your skeleton can comfortably carry. So on the lifestyle side, we recommend incorporate walking and movement in your lifestyle. This plays an important role. Then compression stockings can also help, because they help to pump the blood and fluids back towards the heart from your legs, which is where we normally get varicose veins, although some people can get them on their arms and so on, but most of the time they tend to be on the legs. So compression stockings can help, especially if you're not able to avoid being sedentary or in a certain position for long periods. We also, of course, recommend that you avoid prolonged standing or sitting where you can. I know that sometimes because of work situations and so on, or if you're taking long flights as part of your job, it might not be possible. In that case, that is why I was saying you can try compression stockings to see if they help. When you're sitting and relaxing, try to elevate your legs so that the fluid drains away from them, because it is that fluid collecting in your legs for when you sit for a long time or stand for a long time that creates that distension on your veins and contributes to varicose veins. So help your veins by elevating your legs so that the fluid can drain away from them and they can retain some of their elasticity. All right. So with that, also the supplements that we are going to recommend for you to use for this will be flavonoid complex. We'll also recommend multimineral alfalfa and omega-3 salmon oil. So this will help if you use them early with small varicose veins. But with larger, older varicose veins, the only option left will be surgery. So our recommendation here is not that we are going to be able to reverse significantly enlarged varicose veins, Those ones, you unfortunately would need to consult with a surgeon to see if they are able to help. However, just to say, if you're from a familial tendency, maybe your aunties, you are somebody has got varicose veins, then as usual, try to take that as your precautionary point and start doing the things that are needed to avoid the development of varicose veins. Next question was on senile dementia. Someone wanted to know what to recommend for that. There are several types of dementia with different or related causes. I think we already mentioned things like Alzheimer's disease, injury-related dementia, as well as alcohol-related dementia. So on the lifestyle points, we recommend eating a nutritious, minimally processed food. We recommend being active. We recommend safeguarding rest and 7 to 8 hours of good sleep. And also, as I think I mentioned before, learning new skills, as well as nurturing good relationship, because being in a relationship does help us to be mentally more active as we have conversations with our loved ones, and we get different experiences interacting with them. Then eliminate unhealthy habits such as those problem things, that items that might be in our lifestyle, in our lifestyles. And then the supplements we'll recommend will be Mind Enhancement Formula. This is our herbal preparation for our supporting our brain activities. We recommend vitamin B complex. We also recommend either omega-3 salmon oil if you're not able to buy the entire box of Pro Vitality. So you can choose between Pro Vitality if your budget allows, and omega-3 salmon oil. Then also things that can help will be botanical balance and coenzyme Q10. So I know those are many supplements that are recommended, but for example, botanical balance would be if the senile dementia is related to poor glucose metabolism. All right, then I think this will be my final question on immune support. Someone wanted to know what to recommend to support the immune system. We are becoming more and more aware of how important it is to support our immune system, because we are getting all these novel types of diseases as well as the old ones, and our immune system needs to be able to deal with them. So it's a very good idea to support our immune system so that it functions correctly as it should. So first of all, avoid the foods that trigger different types of attacks. So for example, if you eat a certain food and it gives you diarrhea or constipation and so on, as well as foods which are problematic for some people. For example, for some people it will be wheat, others it will be dairy, and for some people it might even be sugar. So avoid those ones or eliminate them, and then keep your diet minimally processed so that you are eating a diet which helps you to maintain gut health. Remember, we have got the gut microbiome that supports our immune system very well. So make sure that you have got a diet that provides fiber, because the fiber is not for our consumption, but for the consumption of our friendly microbes in our gut. And the supplements that we recommend to support your immune system will be phytodefense. If you're not able to buy the whole phytodefense, you can opt for flavonoid complex. And then we also recommend, so phytodefense or flavonoid complex. We also add there omega-3 salmon oil, vitamin A plus D if you're not able to get good sun exposure. We recommend as well chelated zinc and fiber tablets to supplement your dietary fiber. So I think that for today, those will be the questions that we'll have. I hope that we have tackled your question. I know that we might not have, but as you are aware, we have the Q&A every so often, and we'll be able to come to those questions another time. And as always, you do know that if you want a question answered immediately or quickly, then you can send a message to my number, which is normally available either from your service center or in our chat and so on. So thank you very much for having spent the time and your data. during this period that we have had. And I hope that we shall be able to do this again next week. I wish you all the best as you go about doing your business, because remember, as you're doing your business, you are standing on the front line of making the world a happier and healthier place. Thank you very much. And I will then hand you over to Pascal for the next session.